Okay, so I okay, so it was really eventful Tuesday for me, which is weird because my Tuesdays are always just studying in class and then nothing happens.
But you don't look like you're on fire.
No, I'm not. I am okay, but so the way that my apartment complex is, if there's any fire alarm in any vicinity of your apartment, the whole building is going to go off. So like two buildings can go off at the same time, and it's really kind of happening in another building. So I didn't know if it was in my building or not, but you're just supposed to evacuate. So I was like, dang it. So like, so I grabbed my stuff, grabbed my mask, got
Such
my
an
keys.
inconvenience. Didn't they know we were recording a podcast?
Okay, like I had just finished class on Zoom. I was starving and I was just starting to eat. So I was preparing the stuff and the water's just about to boil for this delicious pasta I was going to make today. And then I was saying, nah, nah, nah. And so I'm like, oh, I have to turn, like I can't have an open flame. So I have to, because there's a fire alarm. That'd be stupid. I'd be going against what, so turn it off. And so I went outside, which I got to meet some animal friends because everyone, of course, brings their pets with them. So that was nice. But then,
Was Toto there?
oh, Toto. There was a really cute anyway, there was a last episode there, so I got a little sad, John, as you know. So
yeah.
because it still hasn't been a year since my little Lhasa died. But anyway, and so the four fire trucks came and a couple police cars. And so, everyone's asking, do you know what happened? Do you know what happened? You know how it is. And we're outside and most people are masked, including me. And so this one, finally, I hear someone talking as if they know something. So I'm like, and I like scooch over. And, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, dear podcast listeners, I just did a little dance too. So check out John Webster Film if you want the full visual. Anyway, so I get over there and she has a picture of smoke. So I was like, okay, this is happening. This is not a false alarm. Duh. But it's on it's the building that's across from my building. It's basically behind my apartment. So it's quite far away. So I stood there, pet some dogs, talked to some people. And then finally a police officer came and she said that we could, go in. But I was so hungry when I was cooking. And so that made me 30 minutes later on starting food. So I was even more hungry, which pushed back our recording even more. And so I was like, oh, woe is me. And I was, okay, yeah, someone, like, legit, their apartment was on fire today. So they're definitely having a worse day. But I had a lot of first world problems for a Tuesday, and I'm used to Tuesdays being chill. So thanks, universe.
None of that is funny because, fire. But I just keep thinking...
also, have I mentioned that I'm pyrophobic and my worst nightmare is dying in my own apartment by flames? So this is always a great time for me when I hear that there's a fire like in my vicinity. And apparently there was one 2 months ago, but I wasn't here. In the building that's just on the other side. What's up with people what is up with...
I would hope most people would have a fear of dying via fire.
Absolutely, but I have like nightmare, like where I wake up sweating nightmares about it. But
But no, I was saying it's like nothing ever comes up like when we're recording live streams. But if we had been doing
when I plan to record,
yeah, but if we had been doing a live stream tonight, we would have been interrupted. So yeah, it's like,
I just would have been like, I have to go. Bye. I'm bringing my phone. I'll update you, like in the chat, and just go outside, and I'd have to leave my computer there. Like, I guess I could grab it, but it's all about safety, so I grab my shit and go.
Yeah, so it's actually a really good thing that we switched over to doing recordings.
Recording is good. No, and this happened too when I was going to record with Hacks Dogma. They were testing the fire alarm system that day. And they're like, oh, anytime from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., it can just randomly screech. And I was like, okay, so Hacks, can you do Wednesday or Thursday? I forget which one. Just because, I don't like to edit. So if something happened, I don't want to have to edit it out. I was just like, forget it. Let's just do another day. I don't like things that disturb me with loud noises like fire alarms. But
yeah, I guess we have that in common because the last thing I want to do is actually edit anything. Hence why we're actually doing this differently than our first podcast, because I've decided that no, I don't want to listen to any of this.
Yeah, some things have changed since the intro episode. Wow.
Oh yeah, and it's actually,
your listeners, our plan has to change based on our abilities.
It's been a while too. Like people will be listening to this shortly after the first episode, but we recorded that a couple months ago.
Yeah. So lots changed since then. And what's good is I enjoyed our break, but I also got had 2 months of being pumped up for Wizard of Oz and getting really excited. And so I'm really excited today, but also it was also a big day for America. So I'm just like, wow, what a Tuesday. It's just got me in a really weird reflective mood today. And, and then having watched Wizard of Oz last night and having that kind of escapism, it's just really interesting.
It's funny that you said that. I mean, I don't want to poke fun because it was a great day in our country. I think even though it's a small step, we have further to go. But when you said that, I had just watched a Craig Ferguson stand-up special the other night. So you said that, and I'm thinking it's a great day for America, everybody. But yeah, it's. I think since we're now going to be dropping these sooner after we recorded them, people will know what we're talking about. Yeah, it's
also happy 420. So it's just really what a day, John. Yeah, what a day.
I will say, I've been staying away from Twitter, but the good news was on the news. So even trying
it was everywhere.
Yeah.
So even up. First thing I did was text both my parents. It was a big day.
Yeah, so even staying away from the hubbub of social media, I still definitely caught wind of it and made me very happy. But anyway, so I just want to say welcome everybody. This is the second official episode of Cinematic Realms.
Yes, and that guy you're listening to is John Webster.
Yeah. Or you're looking at my face, and if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see that I have my beard grown back in. Beard like I already got a complaint from Kate, who is part of our lovely community, our Here Be Dragons community. If you don't watch Here Be Dragons, go check out their YouTube channel. I'm a co-host on there. But yeah, people complain when I shave my beard.
I am actually not a facial hair fan, but I think it works for your face. So I'm surprisingly team beard, but I don't like beards generally. But you've got your OJ, everyone. He's got his OJ.
I do. If you're listening, see, these are the disadvantages.
I've got some Sauvignon Blanc in my effing patriarchy wine glass.
There are several advantages to switching over to podcasts, but one of the disadvantages is that people listening will not get a chance to see me holding my glass of orange juice.
We're on brand. I also have coconut LaCroix. So, dear listeners, if you know me, I'm sticking to my white girl brand. So these visuals, if you want, are here for you. Also, I've got some nice nails going on today. They're sparkly blue. So, if you want visuals, here they are. I get dolled up for this, of course. John, of course, massages his beard before each recording. We have a very strict pre-recording, stage.
Yeah, really. I mean, the prep that I would do would be shaving, but I've been told I should not do that. So
the people have spoken.
Yeah. So today we are going to be discussing The Wizard of Oz, as we stated, which it's nice to get back into the swing of things. Because we've actually had this sitting on the schedule for a while now. And everything kind of got pushed back because I was just exhausted because we'd been doing a lot. And I ran it by you. I was like, we're about to enter into this new phase with the podcast. Maybe we should, take some time off because I needed it. And as it turned out, you had a lot of work that you had to focus on, that you're still focusing on.
I do all the time, but I just don't tell people that. I just say yes when they invite me to do things on podcasts. I have a problem, John. I am addicted to creating content for you, dear listeners. That's what it is.
But my point is, it worked out well for you, I think. You were grateful.
No, it's good. For the time. I still am so busy and have so much to do, but yes, it was nice to have a break. But I did miss watching movies and talking about them with you, J-Dubs.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing, and we kind of introduced this concept on the introductory stream, was to sort of branch out and talk about different things. We have our topic for this week, but also I'm interested, like, what was on your radar for this week, Amy? Did you watch anything like new, or were you really excited about some TV that you watched?
I watched a really good South Korean movie. If anyone wants a nice lesbian period piece. And it's called The Handmaiden from 2016. And I had to watch it for my cinema class. And it was
so
the
hard,
most pleasurable cinematic experience for the plot, John. It was made by a heterosexual man. So, you know, it is a little bit male gazy, but I do think there is some really interesting queer studies kind of things going on. So I really enjoyed that movie, and I want to watch it again because it's a twist movie. So those of you who like different POVs and twist films, this is your Handmaiden. You can find it with subtitles. You might be able to find a dubbed version where there's, you know, they dub it over in English. But I always recommend just taking the time to read the subtitles and hearing the actors in their natural voice, because they switch between Korean and Japanese, and it's kind of cool to hear that switch. And if they're just speaking in English, you can't hear that, and that's a huge part of the movie, because it's about when Japan had colonized Korea. So
I had actually heard about the movie before you mentioned it. I hadn't gotten around to seeing it, but it does sound like it would be interesting to watch. And you know, I'm interested in it for the cinematic reasons.
Absolutely.
We know that we know that you're the thirsty one, Amy. And
yes, I'm the only thirsty one.
I never have any kind of thoughts
I not
like
at all shield you from the everyone really finding out who really is the thirstiest.
I'm a professional, Amy. Okay.
But I will say, if you're also interested in class, that's very much a thing as well, because one character is a rich Japanese woman and they're in colonial Korea, and the other is a Korean handmaiden, so a very low class worker. So lots of interesting Marxist analysis or whatever you want to do with that is also there. And you get to just enjoy the movie because it's also really well written, and there are some great lines and really, really great scenes in there. Anyway, I will stop at that because I know John is against content previews, which some people call spoilers. So I will stop there, but I really recommend The Handmaiden, John. I texted you. Yeah, I messaged you the second I was done watching it. I was like, we have to talk about The Handmaiden. You have to watch it, and we were going to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got definitely some stuff on our radar. A couple of different Asian foreign films. I know that we also want to do Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I've been, you know, going on ever since I bought the physical media about a week or two ago. Lust Caution, which which I haven't seen since.
Yeah, so we've got a mainland Chinese movie, and then Lust Caution is a Taiwanese movie made by Ong Lee. So yeah, I would like to. I'm really hoping to do a lot more East Asian cinema here on Cinematic Realms. So I'm keeping an eye out anytime I watch something.
Yeah, and what was interesting is I haven't seen Lust Caution since it originally came out. And what's amazing is at the time I remember they released 2 versions of the movie on DVD, which was it was
the
funny.
Steamier one and the less steamy one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what it was, you know, they had a release of, you know, the original NC-17 version, and then they marketed the other version as the R-rated version you didn't see in theaters, as though it were something like steamier or something, when really it was a censored version. I always found that funny.
Oh,
but yeah, you and that's the original version has actually been tough to track down.
Lust Caution, actually, I found a lot of parallels with The Handmaiden. So, dear listeners, if you liked Lust Caution, you will definitely like Handmaiden.
But yeah, but if anybody is interested in finally having a Blu-ray edition of the original full-length film, it was just released, and you know, it's well overdue. So yeah, I know a lot of people who listen to this are into physical media just like me. They don't at all make fun of me for it.
Yeah, buying media is on the rise right now, John. So
yeah.
Streaming is dead. I own everything that I watch on.
But speaking of streaming, we also did have. I just finally watched the last episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Good. Now I don't have to tiptoe around you. God.
It was good, but it ends on such a tease.
That's of course it's a penultimate episode. They always do that.
I know, but I was like, no, show me what's in the box. Is it like Wakandan, Captain America outfit? And,
I mean, that's what I think it is. But anyway, those listening, I guess, sorry if you're not caught up with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm sorry, I should sound a lot more like I care. I apologize.
Well, I didn't say like...
I'm sorry, you don't really have any context.
There's no context for that, so I don't think it's actually...
See, I don't know, because you're the spoiler police, so I'm always like, I don't know, maybe John will write me a ticket, so I've gotta watch it.
Yeah, maybe you can just put a little disclaimer in there that says...
The good thing about The Wizard of Oz is you don't have to spoiler alert because it's almost 100 years old.
I know, but maybe in the description you can put minor spoiler warning for episode 5.
Oh my god, I should also be like, it's spoiler warning for this 1939 movie.
But yeah, so...
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put that in the episode description so no one can at me.
I also wanted to ask you, since you were in the chat for it, we over on Here Be Dragons, we did a discussion of season 3 of the Clone Wars. Have you watched the Clone Wars?
I don't want to talk about this because I'm probably never seriously going to watch it, and I know you're mad at me. You'll get mad at me, J-Dubs.
I am. Why? Why not?
Because this is literally like, it's a whole podcast on its own about how I'm not as much of a I'm sorry, that's my Freudian slip. I'm more of a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan. And so it's like pulling teeth to get me to watch Star Wars stuff.
You can be both.
I know I can, but I favor one heavily over the other. And that is Star Trek. I like it better. And I know I can like both, but I feel like in some ways they have different philosophies on science fiction. And anyway.
Yeah, but I don't see Star Wars as science fiction. It's fantasy with sci-fi trappings.
Well, yes, of course, because that's what the Force, which is basically, the Tao. I get it. It's also very like metaphysical and supernatural. But yeah, I don't dislike Star Wars. People don't at me on Twitter. It's not that I don't like Star Wars. It's just that I'm not going to probably watch that many seasons of an animated Star Wars, and I'm sorry. But you could maybe after you watch all seasons of Parks and Rec.
I'm starting to convert Steven, though.
Well, I'm glad, and that's good. Yeah. Good for him. And he already is a Star Wars fan, so it's much easier, like a much more Star Wars fan than I am. So it's easier for him.
What are you talking about? It's not like Empire Strikes Back is his favorite movie of all time. But
so let's talk about this movie, John.
Oh wait, is this a podcast about
this is a podcast about movies,
an episode about the Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess we should get to it at some point. Tell me, so when do you remember first seeing the Wizard of Oz, or do you?
I was definitely in after school, so I was in elementary school, and of course, most people say as a kid, and this is true for me, I was scared of the flying monkeys, which is hilarious because now I really like them. They're interesting for me because I like monkey symbolism. But I remember it was one of those movies that I watched multiple times and always really enjoyed, especially the very, very first shot where she sees Oz. Those first shots where it goes from the like black and white sepia right tone to the colorful land of Oz. Like that gets me every time and actually got me on this watch still. So I thought
you want to know something funny is that when I was a kid, I actually, because I didn't know about the history of films and everything, but I assumed that this was the first color movie that was ever made because of that transition and because this was such a revered older classic. So it for a very long time when I was a kid, I kept thinking that was the beginning of color film, was that transition in The Wizard of Oz.
I think it's probably the most. So there are other movies that do this kind of contrast where, you know, some of it's in black and white and some of it's in color. But I think this is probably one of the most, if not the most, arguably the most, I'll put it as like academic as I can, arguably the most famous movie where you remember that transition so like internally. You really remember it for a long time. So I think the first time I saw this, I was probably 7, if I had to put an age on it. And I still remember some of the shots, definitely remember the songs. And I also remember Toto more than anything. When I watch The Wizard of Oz, and I did it this time too, I follow Toto the whole time, like my eyes, when he's like, because he's always there. He's hanging out in Oz. He's our buddy, right? He's a very important part of the plot, and he's the best movie dog ever. And so I always follow Toto, and it's a really fun way to actually watch it, especially when the Tin Man does his dance. And so Toto's like, oh, this is fun. Oh, back up. He's coming toward me. Oh, this is fun. And he's like wagging his tail the whole time. And it's actually a really good way to enjoy The Wizard of Oz is through the eyes of a dog. Because all that would be even more fantastical. Right?
Yeah.
So it's because we do see it technically through an eyes of a young girl, right? Through Dorothy. But even more innocent, in my opinion, would be the dog. Because dogs are awesome. And so Toto's perspective, especially because it's a low perspective, right? He's looking up at everything, would be so, you know, even more fantastical than a child. So that's why Toto's my favorite character in The Wizard of Oz, I guess.
Also, he's an adorable little dog. So
I just love it. The animals always. So, like, the Cowardly Lion is my second favorite. So... I still to this day freaking love whenever the lion sings, you know, if I were king.
Yeah.
Of the flora. Like, just it's too great. I love it every time.
And I just marvel at like how enduring this movie is, and like how you would never. I mean, I guess this is a thing with older films in general, but especially, I think with this one, you look at it and like costumes and special effects techniques that would, you know, under a modern lens and like a modern film, people would never in a million years take seriously. But somehow, generation after generation, people will still fall in love with, you know, a guy in a giant, you know, lion costume. And then
and like, the horse of a different color.
Yeah,
that's so fun.
And the trees, you know, which are just
the apples,
guys with rubber tree suits on.
That was actually really. I was really surprised for 39. I actually remembered it for some reason being old, like technically newer. I thought for some reason I remembered it being made right after World War II. I didn't know it was during World War II. So I was really actually quite impressed on this watch, because when I was a kid, I was just watching it for entertainment. But this watch, I was kind of looking to, you know, of course, like the sets and everything, you can tell it's more like a stage. But other than that, it's really quite surprising how much it holds up. As far as it's, of course, you could tell that it's older, but I don't know, the Tin Man, he did a really good job, I think, with his movement to make it a lot, you know, it was, there were a lot of practical effects that I think made that movie possible, but you could still tell how much the filmmakers put into it, making Oz possible. Yeah. And how much just sheer, especially for that time, just people power that would take.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that I always just completely marvel at when I go back to watch this is, you know, you mentioned being surprised at actually how old the film is. 1939. It's, you know, we're it's not quite 100 years old, but it's up there. And just to think about how different the world was back then, and we have this beautiful piece of art that is still timeless, and
still the #1 original movie song, Over the Rainbow. This movie still to this day most popular, like from a movie song, original song, and it's amazing. So many people know that song. There are many covers and renditions of it, and it's very impactful, in general to movie musicals, which are great, and I love them so much. And so does J-Dubs. This is a very pro movie musical cinema. Yes, Cinematic Realms loves musicals. I just, whenever she sings Over the Rainbow, every single time I get emotional, and I did this time, especially when she's sitting there, and of course, like I said at the beginning, who my favorite character is, when Toto's sitting next to her, and he raises his paw, and that is such a well-trained dog, and such a smart dog, and it really makes the scene. And the reason I liked Dorothy so much as a kid is because of her dog, really, because the relationship she had with Toto is exactly what I wanted, and then later had with dogs. And over the rainbow, then of course she uses that to describe Oz. We must be over the rainbow, right?
Yeah.
So her outlook of needing an escape so she can save Toto is really a great kind of plot driver for the whole story, and why she wants to run away in the first place, right? And she only comes back because she thinks Auntie M, who she obviously cares about a lot, is sick.
And I was also thinking about this, especially in light of a conversation we were having last night. Also, when she sings Over the Rainbow, I think she's really expressing some of her heart's desires too, so that we find out that it's more about just escaping away from the horrible
Gulch, whatever.
Yeah, Mrs. Gulch.
Yeah.
So because somebody mentioned that maybe the ultimate resolution of the film doesn't.
Yeah, what happens to Toto? Because Gulch is hella alive, because it's not Oz.
Yeah, I'm gonna have something.
So unless Oz is real and she, yeah, no.
I'm gonna have some things to say about that, but also the observation that she learns kind of a lesson about what she's looking for at the end. It's been pointed out that the whole film has just been about her running away to save Toto, but I think if you actually listen to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, she is expressing some things that do come back at the end of the film, when she talked about
Belle's song,
looking
right?
for things,
wanting more than this provincial life. It's
exactly,
a similar song. Over the Rainbow is similar to that, where it is, I crave more and I want more. So that is definitely there. I think it's Toto being in danger that makes her finally do it. But she certainly already wants something a little bit beyond the rural Kansas life, right? And so she gets these great adventures from Oz, and she realizes that family, being with her family is what matters. You could look at it that way. You could also look at it as the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion are her working out her problems. So she thinks she needs courage, she thinks she needs brains, and she thinks she needs a heart to deal with all of her problems, because she's having an adult problem even though she's young, which is that her dog is going to be put to sleep. And that will back then probably just shot. And so she's having an adult problem, and all those three figures who are the farm hands in real life, all are looking after qualities that she seeks, and that I think she embodies many times in the movie, like when she stands up to the wizard when she thinks he's the wizard, not a man behind a curtain, right? She is often brave, she is often smart, and she is often cares, right? Is very emotional. One thing I did notice this time that I didn't notice as a kid is that the Tin Man is looking for a heart but cries all the time. And even though the Scarecrow is looking for his brains, he actually does a couple really smart stuff.
Yeah.
So it's also, when I was a kid, I didn't quite get that it was like, it's her psyche, this is a dream, it's her psyche's way of telling her, your qualities were there all along.
Yeah,
you don't need the Wizard of Oz to give them to you.
Yeah, and
but when I was a kid, that totally went over my head. I was just like, la da 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 da, Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion. This is fun.
And also the lion, when it's Dorothy that's in danger,
stands up. He's brave.
He steps up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely been a factor, and and that's why the wizard even says that talks about their inner qualities and. So yeah, no, I don't know if that's a thing that does register when you're a kid watching.
Well, they have that, and here's the lesson you learned at the end with the wizard, like giving them the things that aren't really the things because they had all along. Should have clued me in, but those kinds of like triumphant scenes at the end are so traditional Hollywood that I almost like gloss over them. Usually when I watch them, it's like, oh yeah, everyone's safe, good job, because if you're watching a movie before a certain time period, it's going to have a happy ending. I really like the movie The Bad Seed, and it's and there's a play, and in the play the bad person gets away, but in the movie they make the bad person struck by lightning by God because they literally could not put that on screen in the 50s. So I'm expecting a happy ending because of this.
Which, by the way, I've just speaking.
It was also World War II. No one wants to.
Speaking of getting struck down by bad weather, I've just realized that I think my headcanon now is that Mrs. Gulch gets caught in the tornado.
So you really want her to actually be dead IRL, and that's why Toto's safe.
And that's why Toto's safe. Yeah.
But I guess she does still have the note, but she would be the one who would need to pursue it. So. Okay, if you want to square it that way. Otherwise, it's definitely a big plot hole. Toto's hella dead at the end of the movie.
Or I could. Alive. Well, here's the thing. Like, okay, you can definitely attack it from a logistical, like real life standpoint, but in terms of storytelling, we've gone through the whole journey to Oz, and the personification of Mrs. Gulch in Oz is destroyed. So in like, as far as like the overall like storytelling, that victory against that obstacle has been achieved, even though if you think hard about it, yes, in the real world, she would still exist. But I understand.
Also, when Dorothy defeated the witch, she was helping her friend, the Scarecrow, who was on fire. So I actually forgot that from when I was younger. I had remembered she just threw water. I didn't remember that it was in service of her friend. So, what's funny is she kills two witches and she doesn't mean to kill either of them. And she's this like badass witch killer according to
I don't think she should, because it's like, especially for a movie made back in 1939, it's like you don't want to have they
literally had to make the witch melt from water, like Sign style, because.
Well, also, I don't think back then they would have had like this young girl be like actually,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
really kill these, the two different people, over the course of the film. Not saying that they shouldn't, maybe, they're witches, which there are good witches. I don't attack me.
There's Glinda, but also I really love Wicked as well. It's one of my favorite musicals, and so I love seeing the kind of the the bad witch in here and thinking about.
Oh yeah. If we're going from the Wicked perspective, then Dorothy is definitely the bad guy.
She's a murderer at the house.
Which, by the way, I have to mention, I got to see Wicked on the London stage when I went there in 2010, awesome. And oh my god, it was so great. I bought the CD like immediately after I saw that, and it's like I would absolutely love to go see that on the stage again, but it probably would not measure up to that performance because I got to see both Wicked and Les Miserables in London.
Ooh. Wow, that's two heavy hitters.
Yeah.
I always appreciate the from a different POV kind of part of it. I really like the trio too, and I think that it's still to this day just a fun tale of adventures of friends, right? Who are going through this journey down the yellow
You
brick
mean,
road.
I'm sorry, but that trio, you mean the stand-ins for Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, because there is totally an identical scene in the Two Towers when they're on the
I think
rock
you mean
cliff.
the Twin Towers. I'm just kidding.
Oh, stop it, Amy.
I made one mistake, and I'll never.
You're the one calling attention to it.
I know, because some listeners will anyway.
But it's like in the Two Towers, you've got that scene of them, hiding behind the rocks, and you've got the soldiers marching in who look just like the guards in The Wizard of Oz. That is such a great homage to that scene. And every time I watch that moment of the Two Towers, I'm going, oh, yo.
Yeah, and I think there were a lot of things I had, it had been long enough that I didn't remember, even though I've seen this many times. And I love being kind of delighted again by this movie.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, and it's, the Munchkin Land is kind of problematic, obviously, but the way that they welcome them and everything.
Don't ruin everything.
I'm not about to ruin it. Let me finish, J-Dubs. I love how literally let me finish, because I love the little ballet and then the Lollipop Guild, and I think that's such a charming part of the movie. There, yeah. J-Dubs, that's literally what I was about to say. And you automatically think, because I said though problematic, comma. That was literally the only commentary I was adding.
I know. But yeah, that's what
I'm just saying. Solidarity with little people. That's not cool. Anyway.
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking about, the Lollipop Guild, which is just about one of the cutest things.
The way that they have their jaw, like the way it's great.
Yeah. But I'm always laughing at when is it Glinda? That's the name of the quote unquote good witch, right? When all of a sudden, through seemingly through some magic of her own, she gets the slippers to go onto Dorothy's feet, and it's like, Dorothy didn't ask for that. Like, why are you giving her trouble?
Yeah, not only that, but you look at this whole movie and you're like, Glinda, you're really powerful. Is there something against you wearing the slippers? Like, why don't you take one for the team if you're such a strong witch? Like, can only mortals wear them? Like, witches can't wear them? And I don't know. This whole, like, sometimes when you watch this, you're like, oh, and then she's like, why did I forget what it was? But, she said she figured something out. Oh, the whole time she could have clicked and said, there's no place like home, whatever. And then she asked Glinda why she didn't tell her. And she said, you wouldn't have believed me. And when I was a kid, I don't know why I totally bought that. And now I'm like, you're kidding? She said, I need to get back to Kansas. Look, all she would have done if it didn't work was look silly and clicking her heels. She would have tried it. I just thought that was like, okay, look, the journey in Oz and everything was important for her self-development as a character. But seriously, Glinda, that's weak sauce.
Which, again, goes back to Wicked. When you watch that, you're like, yeah, that fits with Glinda's character. Poor Elphaba is the victim in all this.
Yes.
God, now we're just gonna end up. We're gonna start singing. We're talking about a musical,
Defying Gravity.
By the end, we're gonna be singing the Wicked music. So
yeah. So what about you, J-Dubs? You asked me about your first time. Do you remember your first time watching The Wizard of Oz?
I don't, but what I do remember is that, and of course, my memory is a physical media. Hello. I remember a really old VHS tape edition, which I think was like, it had like 35th anniversary on it. Which, no, that can't be right. No, 55th. Okay, there we go. Because that would have been impossible. 55th anniversary, which still if you think about it now, seems insane to look back on the time that's passed since then. It just makes me feel old.
Which never happens when we talk.
Yeah, never. Never. I'm never feeling insecure about
I'm always older. Talking about the Pokemon and Snapchat. I'm just kidding. I don't use Snapchat. That's Gen Z. I'm a millennial.
Yeah. Yeah, but I need to stop doing that because you're secretly plotting your revenge on me every time I comment on your age.
It's because I look younger than I am too, so I'm constantly fighting for whatever age I am, which I know I will enjoy when I'm older. But right now it's kind of annoying because especially if I'm wearing a headband, some people think I'm like 21, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
I only get carded if I'm wearing a headband. I've done trials where I go to the state, I'll go with a headband and without, and I always get carded if I have a headband.
People always, up to a certain point, people thought I was a lot younger than I was. Of course, then once the hair started to go, that wasn't so much a problem anymore.
Thing changed. Poor Jacob.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, Wizard of Oz.
Also, I'm gonna put. Also, I just want to say again, the Emerald City, and I actually messaged you this. I forgot that she puts them to sleep with poppies, and I was like, "Oh, that one time when your heroes all get high." I was like, "Wait a second." She's literally using opium to give them sleep droughts.
That's not a reference to anything at all.
Nothing at all. This is not at all a reference to any major 2 wars that happened in the 1800s. Anyway, poppies, poppies don't at all have a history and colonialism or anything. Anyway, I really did. That was actually probably my first time really grasping what that whole scene could, kind of different ways to look at that scene. I thought that was really interesting, and I actually didn't get it.
But why does snow make it all better?
Well, I'm guessing that this is a weird thing. I don't know. This is my workaround. Are you ready, J-Dubs?
Okay.
The witch's magic was to make the poppies bloom and then give off this euphoric sleep drought thing. Basically, you're smoking so much opium you fall asleep. And then Glinda's like, "Oh, I was powerful this whole time and probably could do this whole journey, but because this is a movie that needs, there's going to have to be Dorothy's journey, I'm going to make it snow, and then that's going to kill all the poppies and they'll stop making you sleepy." Also, when I was a kid, I didn't get why only half of the party went to sleep, and then I realized, because those are the ones that have lungs. Because the Tin Man and the Scarecrow don't have lungs.
Which, that's the point in the movie where they choose to actually get technical about, real world.
Yeah, that's when the Wizard of Oz is like, guys, we gotta make this realistic now. The Tin Man doesn't have lungs. Neither does the Scarecrow. But little Toto, Dorothy, and the Lion do, so they're gonna go to sleep. I can just see them meeting. It's the 30s. It's all white men in suits in the writer's room. And they're like, Bill, I'm sorry. I know we have this whole plot hole because Toto's still probably gonna get hella killed, but hold up. The Tin Man and the Scarecrow can't go to sleep because they don't have lungs. And that's how this scene was created. You question the snow, but they thought about the lungs, Jada.
Yeah, I need to pay them the due respect.
That this classic movie deserves.
Thinking about the science.
Yes, absolutely.
It's science.
It's science, which is why you have magic and flying monkeys. So
the monkeys. So what does this mean to you, Amy?
Oh my God, do I have thoughts. So there is a long history of monkey symbolism associated with evil, associated with grasping, also associated with wisdom, such as if you want to extend it to primates and say the wise baboon, right? And so I've done a whole 2 hours talking about monkey imagery with Nessie over at the Unspun Yarn, so check that out. She has a great channel. Please subscribe on YouTube. We talked about this a lot. My first ever essay and kind of episode of my podcast was about monkey imagery in Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. Anyway, so she, they're obviously her henchmen, and they're flying monkeys, and it's awesome. But I found it really interesting because, usually witches have familiars, and so, and it's usually one, and you'll notice that she has kind of one main monkey that she talks to. So I find that interesting. She kind of has this like general, and they've got these little costumes. And I'm sorry, it was terrifying as a kid, but it's really fucking cute now with their little costumes. Just I can't. Anyway, but they're especially the scenes where they show from far away the monkeys, which actually I thought aged really well.
Yeah.
These like battalions of monkeys, this aerial support, it's basically like bombers.
I think all of
I actually could easily see that. It is World War II. You could easily see those as bombers, right? These like biplanes coming.
I actually think all of the special effects and like matte paintings and everything hold up really well. Not that like you'd ever be fooled by them into like standing up against
but
like
still
the realism
39
of,
like I said, for some reason in my head it was like
visual effects, but
44.
But
it's like
they're
39.
Still,
wow.
They're still so beautiful. And that's actually another thing going back to Lord of the Rings, because I'm always gonna, work my way back to Lord of the Rings. But they used matte paintings in those films as well, and it's such an old tradition that so that even when you have a movie from 1939 that uses matte paintings, even if you can tell they're matte paintings, they're still gorgeous to look at. So I loved all those scenes when Dorothy is traveling down the yellow brick road, and you can see those matte paintings in the background, but it all works so beautifully and meshes with the actual sets.
Yeah, and the colors obviously are a very big part of it. You have the horse of a different color that changes, I believe, twice. It's 3 different colors in that scene.
Which I completely forgot that the horse changes colors like from shot to shot.
Yeah, it was like, I think purple, blue, and then yellow, or maybe it's purple, orange, yellow. Anyway, it was gorgeous. And I think that this also really set a high, one of the reasons it's a classic is it really set a high precedent for movie musicals too. The songs are very, very memorable, and each character kind of has its introductory song, and it's still a part of the journey. That's something I really noticed this rewatch, which was she comes along the Scarecrow. He sings about not having any brains. You see a Tin Man. He's like, oh, I wish I could feel things, have sentiment, my heart.
Well, I love when he's rocking back and forth. And then
Toto goes back and forth too. I'm telling you guys, watch The Wizard of Oz and only look at Toto. It's the best way to watch The Wizard of Oz. Anyway, and so I thought that was, and then of course we have the lion at the end. It really actually, I think, comes together as a nice trilogy, those 3 together. And I think that's probably that initial jaunt down the yellow brick road where she picks up each of her companions, I think is probably one of the best examples in movie musical history of introducing these characters while keeping the plot moving forward.
Yeah.
And I also think you have that classic, the villain makes us an appearance on the way, right? You have the poppies, after they're all of them are together, but in the forest when she meets the Tin Man, right? You see her. And I also felt a lot of Snow White kind of imagery going on in that forest scene that I hadn't really noticed before with the witch and the apples and the princess. So that it's really surprising, I think, every single time that I watch this, what I see that I didn't see before, or something that stood out to me much more than usual. And so I really, especially because after you get those introductory songs, you get when they're in the spooky forest and there's the lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. It's really one of the best kind of adventure musical like scenes altogether.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just the fluidity with which all of those numbers progress, and as she meets each of her friends. And, we're not going to talk about the fact that she meets the Scarecrow like 5 minutes earlier than the Tin Woodsman, and then says, "I'm going to miss you most of all." It's like, that's a little cold.
That's true. I actually never thought about that. That's not cool.
Although I did notice this time that she kind of whispers it into his ears, even though it doesn't sound like necessarily like a whisper. So maybe she was just intending that for his ears alone, which makes it a little bit better. But no, just, you're right. The way everything just kind of slides one right into the next. And I love when they get to Oz. And you mentioned about the horse and stuff, but I just
the
love
Emerald City.
I just love the Emerald City, and that's what of course they're not. But when and the fact that you got the actor who plays the wizard, playing all those roles of the guy at the door and the guard, and all that stuff, I think it's hilarious. And then when he starts tearing up, he's like, "I'll get you in to see the wizard." It's great. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think also something that I really enjoyed is I guess I had kind of forgotten also how kind Dorothy is at most points throughout the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and how loyal she is to her friends, even though she just met them. She does have, of course, that comment, "Oh, I feel like I met you before," because they're people in her real life. But you also see how she is with the farmhands and everything. They all like her, and she seems like a really nice young girl. And then, of course, she has this dog that she cares about. And I think it's also very much obviously about growing up, because at one time or another, every kid has kind of wanted to run away. So it's also very much a coming of age story as well.
Yeah. And
what's your favorite song?
Yeah, let me run through them in my head. I really do. I mean, maybe it seems obvious, but I really do like, we're off to see the Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
I like it.
It's just, especially once she like heads off,
when they're all together,
but also that initial, when she starts on the yellow brick road and the Munchkins are, waving her goodbye. There's something about the instrumentation of when she first starts to like get into that sort of,
and it has, and of course 39. So back then they had the big movie orchestras, so you really got those grade A instrumentals.
I was really thinking about that a lot when I was watching
Symphony
it this time, because, and I go on and on about this, but nowadays more than ever, you're getting a lot of stores that rely heavily on electronics and stuff. So I think it's becoming more and more obvious to me when I go back and listen to older films, the beauty of the orchestrations and
of a symphony, right? And you have that very common, don't copyright us, YouTube, but like that's done with strings. You don't need. I'm sorry, I'm a violinist, so I'm always going to say this. You don't need all the fancy electronic stuff. You can make music with all the instruments of the world. And so I really, there's so many iconic non-song sounds in music in this movie, like the one I just told you, which is when you see Gulch riding on her motorcycle, her bicycle in the Twister. So it's very,
which I think iconic. Gives credence to my theory that she gets sucked up into the tornado.
Yes, I don't know, J-Dubs, I'm not buying it.
Well, fine, but it's
you want to fix this plot hole? Let it stand, J-Dubs.
It's my headcanon now.
Okay, you can have your headcanon, but you gotta also come down to earth with the rest of us. Toto is hella dead. It is not resolved.
The movie ends and he's fine. Okay. So.
And that's it. That's all she wrote, folks.
Yeah. But I was telling you, like, to sidetrack, I don't know if you've ever seen Jason and the Argonauts. But like the whole point of that film is that the main character, Jason, there's this prophecy that he's gonna come back and like kill the villain. But he has to get sent on this mission first to retrieve the golden fleece. And then he's going to return and kill the bad guy. But the movie ends when like when he and his men get the fleece and like the credits roll. It's like, no, that wasn't like the end of the story. It might be a victorious moment, but like there's actually still a lot more of that tale to go. So it's like that. I think that's the rule of like older films. They'd rather end on like a triumphant, happy note than actually resolve all the elements of the story.
Still has the real world problems she's going to have to deal with when she's not in Oz anymore. So, but you know, it's not, and regardless, this is a beautiful movie. And as far as I know, Steven doesn't have an irrational hatred of this movie like he does of Citizen Kane. So I don't know many people that don't like The Wizard of Oz.
Well,
most people I know like it.
I was saying before, it really is the ultimate sort of nostalgia movie. Absolutely. Because everybody grows up with it. Mm-hmm. And so everybody looks at it with rose-tinted glasses, which is why we don't care.
We forgive it; it sins.
Yeah,
because
if there's a plot hole, we don't really care because it's The Wizard of Oz and we love it anyway. And
also, it's a small thing, but like, you know, when you have like Judy Garland on the screen, right? You know, she's immortalized in that. But I just want to say, people live longer than dogs. So Toto is also immortalized. Dogs don't have very many years. And Toto is a star. I mean, movie dog history, that dog. And you know, he's why there was a Beethoven or there was an Air Bud. This is my like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to talk about Toto this whole episode.
But here's the thing, what I actually didn't know, I mean, maybe I knew it at some point, but I'd certainly forgotten. I was watching the credits and the dog's name was Toto.
Right? Isn't it so precious? Like, he doesn't get a song like Beethoven. Roll over Beethoven, you know, but he gets to make cinema history. And he gets to be the first dog that is like the most memorable dog for everyone. Everyone knows Toto. So good on you, Toto.
Yeah, and
what a good boy.
He's immortalized forever, for all time, because the Wizard of Oz, I don't think, is ever going away.
Definitely not. Ever. And it's actually interesting that this is what we are kind of started our new era of cinematic realms, you know?
Yeah, and which I was very happy about.
You know, this was kind of conscious when we were making that decision, but not. I didn't realize how good of a decision that was until I was watching this movie and thinking about how The Wizard of Oz has affected American culture and cinema overall. You know, we're basically starting with technically the beginning of modern cinema. Really, popular movies, there were definitely movies before this that are good movies, but if we're talking about creating the like Hollywood market as we know it today, The Wizard of Oz set that bar for that.
Yeah, I think that, and it does sound kind of unfair to all the landmark pieces of cinema that came before Wizard of Oz, but
there are great movies.
Yeah, but I think when you're growing up, especially if you're someone who loves movies as a kid, The Wizard of Oz does kind of register as like the first. Part of that is because of what I was saying earlier, where, you know, as far as I was concerned, it was The Wizard of Oz was the first color movie because of that. But it just, and because it's so old but as a kid, you love it regardless because it's a classic. I think it does for a lot of people sort of feel like the beginning of film. and it's the beginning of a lot of people's movie love. So
yeah, and that's why I kind of say maybe more modern cinema than like silent films. Like obviously there was cinema in Hollywood before this, but the classic idea of the American moviegoer, like what film is gonna be that box office hit? The Wizard of Oz was the first, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
As far as like what we have with Avatar, where it just fucking blew up. Titanic blew up, right? That The Wizard of Oz is kind of the first thing you can point to where it's like every American saw that movie.
Yeah.
So it's one of those films. It's just never going away. And I think good because it's a great movie.
Okay, so I want to pause for a moment because we're an hour into the episode. So I thought we'd just kind of do our mid-roll. I know we've switched formats.
What is
completely,
mid-roll?
But so I don't know it's probably a little over a mid-roll. But the nice thing is if people are listening to this, they can look at the little bar and see that no, it's not over yet. There's more to go. So we don't even necessarily have to say it. But yeah, we can just talk about like what's coming up, which our schedule is a little jumbled now because we had it all thought out before we took our break, but and now we're in the process of like reorganizing. But our next episode is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which will be the first installment of the Nightly Hour. So
even more official.
I think we're both very excited about that.
Very, very excited for that.
We should mention that, like, obviously we mentioned on the last episode, we're both super big Keira Knightley fans, and we do have our official accounts on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr for the Knights of Keira. If you're watching the YouTube version, you see the links up there, and I guess I should try and make some links on the different
check the description.
Yeah, put them there.
Listeners.
But yeah, so we'll be doing Pirates of the Caribbean next week, and we can talk about how Elizabeth Swann is the true protagonist of those films.
Yep.
And we're going to be having a guest for that episode. Christina, Lady Triple, will be joining us.
And it's going to be John introducing, and then Christina and I will talk, and we will allow John to say 3 things the whole episode. And that's it. So when Christina comes on, it's our ground. It's not your podcast anymore, J-Dubs.
But that's also why nobody else is joining.
We cannot have another guest.
It's going to be hard enough for me to try and fight my way into the conversation. But that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that, especially in this new format. It'll be interesting to see how it goes having a guest when we're not doing the whole thing with a live audience.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better for everyone's schedule. So
yeah, but yeah, and then in the coming weeks after that, although some things possibly might shift around, but I think we're looking at X2, X-Men United, and then The Little Mermaid, and we're going to be having guests on for those as well. For X2, it'll be our friends Kelly and Jenna, who are big X-Men fans, and then for The Little Mermaid, this guy Bronte, I think
Bronte, I believe. I'm sorry.
Yes, something like that. And
I think there's an umlaut. No, I'm just kidding.
And also another of our friends, Kate, who
was on the Mean Girls episode.
Yeah. If you follow us on the John Webster Film YouTube channel,
John gave me the keys for that one, so I ran that stream, and it was mostly me and Kate, and John was allowed to say the speech, the Caesar Gretchen Wieners speech, and that was about it. So
yeah, if you want to see a Shakespearean delivery on that one, go ahead and
produce it as Caesar.
Yeah, eventually. a lot of these episodes that we did will actually be converted to podcast form. But if you just can't wait to see them, go ahead and check out the John Webster Film YouTube channel, where there's a lot of our back catalog of live streams. But yeah, so that's what's coming up for the podcast.
If you're on YouTube, you can watch me spill water all over myself, so that's fun. Jesus, yeah. I'm sorry, I just got it.
But Amy, you've also got your own
YouTube I've got my stuff.
And then
I have a YouTube. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel and a podcast and a blog, and I do all sorts of stuff. I'm on every platform. So Podbean, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all the things. I talk about fantasy, lots of fantasy. I've on some great guests. So Song of Ice and Fire, His Dark Materials. Have you heard of the Poppy War?
Never. I've never heard of that.
The Witcher, X-Men, and more. I do a lot of nerd stuff. I'm also I pretty much talk about what I love. And so I'm actually also going to talk about Degrassi with some Degrassi podcasters because I'm obsessed. I've been obsessed for a very long time. I'm going to have a very special Buddy Banter in May because May is my birthday month. I'm going to have, so Buddy Banter is the only time I ever go live on my YouTube channel. It's once a month, usually, pseudo-monthly. And I have a buddy on and they pick the topic and we talk about whatever they want. J-Dubs was my very first buddy. So I'm going to have him and the other 3 people, hopefully, everyone will make it. So everyone who's been a buddy so far, so there are 4 people total I'm going to have guests. And since it's my birthday month, I'm going to pick the topic, even though it's usually about my buddy. And I have picked the topic of shows we were obsessed with during our teens. And so everyone's going to pick 3 shows and also have some honorable mentions. And they're going to talk about their teen years and these shows and how it affected them, because I am, at my core, a show watcher who is a burgeoning cinephile, thanks to J-Dubs. So we're going to have a really good time on my channel. So that's going to be live sometime in May. If you subscribe to me and turn on that little bell in YouTube, you'll know when I'm going live. If you follow me on Twitter, trust me, I'm going to plug the crap out of it, and you will know exactly when it's going to be.
Yes. Plugging stuff a thing you do?
Plugging stuff is definitely a thing. So yeah, please follow me at Amy Blackfire on Twitter. It's AEMY and then Blackfire with a Y.
Yeah, definitely check out all of her Buddy Banter episodes because those
they're all over the place. So if you're like, what topic could be? It's literally anything. We've talked about the Kung Fu Panda movies, talked about DC. We also talk about serious things like politics and fantasy, and and what we talked about, J-Dubs.
Which was basically gender stereotypes in media, watching habits, which was what I presented to you, and then Yodi comes on and wants to talk about Kung Fu Panda. So
So yeah, we talked about all 3 movies too, if you're a Kung Fu Panda fan. So of course I am a PhD student of Chinese studies, so I had a field day with the Chinese symbolism in those movies. So we had a really good time. So, and of course Yogi, he picked that because he loves those movies. So it's really a great, Buddy Banter is a great way to meet content creators and even non-content creators, really my friends. And they're going to talk about something that they love. So if you like me, I like to watch other people talk about things that they're passionate about, and I like to talk about things I'm passionate about, and that's exactly what Buddy Banter is about. So,
but you did decide that finally you'd had enough of other people picking the topic, so
it is going to be my birthday month. You have no choice. I am the queen for the whole month.
That's fair. Which, by the way, for your birthday month, we will be doing a discussion of Mulan here on Cinematic Realms, which I have no choice. It's predetermined. So.
It is predetermined. We are talking about one of my favorite movies in the whole world, the animated Mulan, because there is no other Mulan. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about diving back into that because after we watched it initially, I enjoyed it, but it was my first time seeing it. And then I took another glimpse at it again on Disney Plus, not to watch the whole thing, but just to, watch a few minutes of it. And I guess Disney Plus upgraded it to 4K. And I was watching a bit of it and I was like, God, this film is absolutely beautiful.
It's amazing. It's
yeah. So I'm
very excited to talk about it.
So I'm looking forward to
a preview for May.
Yeah.
We're definitely talking about Mulan one of the 4 weeks.
Which, by the way, those of you just coming to us as new listeners, Amy is a very thorough planner, as you can tell, and so even though we may only announce some things a couple weeks ahead of time,
trust me, we have the most 15 things.
And we've got we have a list of
it's up to it has to be up to 200 close to by now.
Yeah, we're probably just gonna have to go ahead and say that's where it's at, because we have stuff that's not even numbered.
Yeah,
like on top of our numbered list, we've got a bunch of others. Yeah, I just looked. The numbered list is at 171, but there's a bunch of other stuff too. So
yeah,
clearly we're gonna have time to get to all of that.
Mm-hmm. It's not at all wishful thinking. So.
But okay, yeah. So I think.
What do you got coming up on Here Be Dragons, J-Dubs?
Yeah, I should go ahead and plug that, because we actually just did a stream this past Sunday talking about. Wait, what did we talk about? Clone Wars, Star Wars, the Clone Wars.
The one that you force everyone to watch. The one that you gave me shit at the beginning of this pod about.
Yeah, I finally got us to veer back to Clone Wars. We discussed season 2 8 months ago, and we just finally got back around to season 3, which I was very happy, because Steven and Nessie are really gung ho about it now, because the second half of season 3 is really when things start to heat up for that show. So we had a lot of fun talking about that, and coming up this coming Sunday at 6:00, we'll be talking about the rest of the episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which, surprisingly, I've been enjoying more than Steven and Nessie, which is odd, because I'm notorious.
I know that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm notorious for being lukewarm about,
Is lukewarm? That's a really nice way to put it.
Yeah, well, I don't want to lose listeners already. But yeah, so we'll be covering the rest of that, and yeah. So, anything else, Amy, before we dive back in?
No, I will say tomorrow, April 21st, Bleep the Patriarchy on the Unspun Yarn. Bleep ahoy!
Yeah, check out Nessie's channel, The Unspun Yarn. She also co-hosts Here Be Dragons with me and Steven. And
yeah, so she and I are going to have on our good friend Kelly, aka Jaded Redhead, and she is a ship nerd, and we're going to talk about misogyny on the high seas. That's going to be very fun.
Yeah, which Kelly loves that name, doesn't she?
Going live at 5 p.m. Eastern. Yes, I had to do time.
Wait, when is that?
2 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, but that's tomorrow?
Oh my God, no one's going to hear this because it's going to be up on Saturday. so it is now on the Unspun Yarn channel, and I'm sure we did a good job, so everyone enjoy it.
Yeah, go check it out.
Start it. This isn't live.
You're going to have to get used to that.
Dang it. Well, there you go. That has happened now, because you're in the future, listeners. So enjoy it. The Unspun Yarn on YouTube. Nessie deserves your sub.
Yeah, you guys probably noticed on the last episode, we advertised a bunch of stuff that either was long since passed or hasn't materialized yet. That was a result of us recording that episode 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
But
cool. I think we are good with all of the plugs.
Okay, good. Thank God.
Yeah, so that gets really long sometimes, dear listeners. I'm sorry. John and I both have a lot going on this channel and outside of this channel / pod and outside of that. So we want to let you know where we'll be and what we'll be doing.
Yeah. So do you remember where we left off in our discussion?
we were bouncing around all over the place anyway. What did you... Okay, so the Wizard always plays differently for me every time I watch it. And this time what really stood out to me was you know, I mean, he is a flim flam man. He's supposed to be he is the snake oil salesman, right? But at the same time, he has I just love that scene, and it really tickled me this time when she was like, "Wait, come back," and he's like, "I don't know how it works." And then 2 seconds before, he was like, "I shall fly off into aeronautical history, you know, feats never done before seen." It's like it's that confidence of the mediocre white man that is just chef's kiss.
Well, I have to say, I really was like, this time, probably more than other views, I was like, man, this guy is just so full of shit.
He is the whole time, yeah. And I love it too because he is this carnival performer. He's this showman. He's the guy in The Knight's Tale. I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking. Chaucer?
Chaucer. Don't speak ill about Chaucer that way.
No, I'm not saying he's the same, but he's the hype. He's kind of a hype man, you know, for himself.
Yeah.
But Chaucer is a hype man for in it.
But look, I
didn't mean to soil the great Knight's Tale.
Paul Bettany deserves more respect than
deserves better.
Although I would not mind seeing Paul Bettany do a turn as the Wizard of Oz.
He would kill that role.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But no, it's like you have to admire him too, because it's like he gets caught.
Until you make it.
He gets caught red-handed, you know, and it's like, and he switches like immediately to, you know, handing out all these trinkets and making them like feel good about themselves. And
he knows how to flip the narrative. He's a PR guy.
Yeah, and turning himself into a hero and like, I'm gonna do this for you, and we're gonna go home. But then, of course,
he's not the one that saves Dorothy either. She's, you know,
which is actually kind of shocked me for a 1939 film that they have him, you know,
the male savior character.
Like he continues to be a buffoon to the point where he can't even bring the balloon back, you know, and everything, and it ends up being up to, you know, Dorothy herself to, you know, to get herself home.
Yeah.
And I thought that was...
Actually, I didn't think about that. That is interesting.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, like I said, 1939, that's actually, even if they didn't intend it, which they probably didn't, that is pretty forward thinking.
Yeah, and not to mention, you know, I do think of Alice in Wonderland, of a girl going through an adventure, but usually it was boys that would go through these adventures in fiction. With a slight caveat about Alice in Wonderland, I don't want to ruin it for you, dear listeners, but if you are interested, the guy who wrote Alice in Wonderland kind of was obsessed with his neighbor's little girl who was named Alice. Maybe not a great thing. I'm just saying, if you want to know a little bit how creepy that was, you can look that up. So I won't ruin it for you, but there is this idea about the childhood innocence that is often embodied in the young white girl, frankly. Especially the young blonde girl, but of course Dorothy isn't. But this idea of kind of this young girl being kind of thrown into the wild and on this adventure, and then I really think it's interesting to see, because we do have other examples of young girls going on adventures. For example, His Dark Materials, which would be an example from the 90s. But you do have, or you know, Arya in Game of Thrones is very common. It's a very popular example of that. But it is interesting that to see Dorothy as the center of the adventure and as the adventurer, when it is usually young boys who go on these kinds of adventures. And it's really her compassion and her bravery and her loyalty to her friends that are her virtues and not her physical strength.
Yeah.
And her witch-killing prowess, of course.
Yeah.
She's a witch killer!
Which, like, I wonder how that would be tackled in a modern interpretation of in The Wizard of Oz, if, you know, they'd have Dorothy intentionally, you know, killing the witch, or if they'd, you know, have it be just like by happenstance that she's trying to save her friend. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly, I mean, I'm kind of horrified by the notion of a modern version of The Wizard of Oz. It's like, please don't ruin that thing that I love. Even though they did do that. I forget it. It was some kind of Oz-centered movie with James Franco, but that was something different. That wasn't the actual story. The Wizard of Oz. That was like a
If that's the
prequel
one
thing.
I think of, it's like it's the wizard story of him crash landing in Oz.
Yeah.
So it was like however many years earlier, 40 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Was that James Franco? For some reason, I was remembering it as Johnny Depp, and I must have misremembered that. Oh, I'm thinking of him and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right person? Yeah. Okay. I consider those movies very similar in some ways. Is Charlie in the Chocolate Factory? What year is that? That's the 50s, right? Or like 50s.
Well, no, that's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Sorry, Willy Wonka, not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was like mid 2000s, I want to say.
Probably. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I was thinking of
I just, but the thing I remember about that movie is when they bring in like the giant like chocolate bar, like the Monolith from 2001, and they have the music playing. I think both my mom and I started cracking up at that, which she only got because I had been watching 2001 a lot around that time, and she was sick of it because she is not a fan. We'll just put it that way. But yeah, I don't think anybody else in the theater got what we were laughing at, which is usually the way of it. But anyway, sidetracking, this is not a stream about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or 2001. So let's so we can focus again on the Wizard of Oz. So who do you like best among her companions? Since Dorothy clearly picks her favorite. But who do you like the best?
Well, I think I said it before, but I'll like reiterate that I really like the Cowardly Lion, especially his number about being king. And he's always been the character that I thought I would get along with the most, and I kind of get being afraid. I mean, even just because you're a big lion, scary lion, doesn't mean you're not afraid of things. So, and a man can only be brave if he is afraid, according to Ned Stark. So I think that he has a lot of thematic importance to the story and to the hero's journey. Bravery and courage is a big part of that. So, of course you need brains, you need cunning, right? With the Scarecrow, and you also need a heart. You need to be a good person to be a hero, like the Tin Man's looking for. But I think that courage, the Cowardly Lion, I always thought that that was most important in some ways to the hero's journey, is putting aside fear and sticking up for the right thing because it's right, and not cowering in the corner. So I always liked the Cowardly Lion the most. But what about you, J-Dubs?
It's one of these weird things where I'm the one who asked the question, but I don't know that I've actually ever thought about it that much before. But I will say about what you were saying about the Cowardly Lion, something that I also remarked upon watching it this time, and maybe it's because we've been having these discussions lately, but I really kind of liked how, like, especially in that scene where, he's gotten all pampered up in the Emerald City and stuff. It's, he's talking about, wanting courage, and it's like, and he puts up a show like, he wants courage so he can be like the manly, or lionly line, we should say. But it's like the way he, like enjoys being like pampered up, and he's got like the curls in his hair, and he's got, you can't see it here.
Yes, he's getting the royal treatment.
But he's got like a bow on his head, and the way he sings, it's very like.
I wonder if it's on. There we go. In this picture, you can on YouTube, you can see it. There is a bow.
It's not like representative of a modern conception of like
male beauty.
Yeah, it's sort of, quote unquote manliness, or whatever. And I kind of like that. I think it makes it like not a toxic representation of him wanting courage, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so he can like take it out and measure it, right? Necessarily, it's so that he can. At first, he says, "Oh, I want to be king. I want to be king of the forest." But when we do see his bravery before he, quote unquote, gets that bravery that he needs, he does it to try to save Dorothy, right?
Yeah.
So it's not because he wants to show someone what's what, it's for a good cause. And so even though you could say, oh, this idea of bravery, especially in battle, this kind of martial aspect, it could easily go toxic masculinity. I think you pointed out, just with a very simple symbolic scene of the bow, an example where actually the Wizard of Oz is disrupting that idea a little bit of the masculine lion figure, which I really appreciate. It is really cute, especially with Oz. Oz is the Emerald City and Munchkin Land. All of it's very cute, and I like that it kind of just gives into the cuteness, right? I mean, it gives into the wackiness, and I think that's why Oz is so much fun, and why so many generations of Americans have escaped to Oz when watching this movie, because it really is. It's magical and fantastical, but we care for Dorothy and Toto and her three companions.
Yeah.
Right, we want
notice how I completely...
Obviously, it becomes more complicated than that. The wizard can't help, but...
Notice how I completely sidestepped actually answering the question, though.
I mean, you do that all the time, J-Dubs. You never just answer my question, so it's...
No, actually, even though, like, I just criticized Dorothy for doing this, I will actually say that I'm probably most fond of the Scarecrow. I think it's because... he is like the first person that she encounters on the road. So there is something about that bond that...
And never forget your first.
Well, it's just like it's the two of them setting out together at first with no assumption that they're going to meet anybody else to go with them. And he is very, for all his talk about lacking, brains, he's very creative, about what to do to go save Dorothy, and he always seems like he's sort of on top of things.
Well, yeah, and he uses
he's very
the
clever.
Tin Man's axe to cut the chandelier to fall on the troops. Like, he's strategically smart.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always been quite fond of him, and just, and the way the actor kind of portrays, being made of straw, the way he just kind of...
Yeah, especially the first scene where he's wobbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'm making motions, forgetting that we're making a podcast now, so I need to be doing stuff for people who can't see our YouTube videos. But I do love
J-Dub's
the way he's
gesturing wildly.
But the way he physically moves and the way he's like stuffing, the straw back and into his body and stuff. So his performance is a lot of fun, and I like the character a lot, which is not to leave the poor Tin Woodsman out in the cold.
Don't forget him. He'll rust if you forget about him. No, and the way that like the Tin Man and also the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, they both kind of like help pump up the Cowardly Lion to do things,
Yeah.
Sometimes even literally dragging him to do things. But like, we all need those friends that will challenge us in a good way, right? Who will go, no, this is what we need to do. We're taking you along with us. Like, we're going to do this thing.
I just remembered like my favorite moment in the movie, because I always die laughing at this. It's when they're walking up to the wizard, and the lion is holding his tail. It's like, oh, someone's pulling my tail.
They're like, it's you.
It's you. I think that's just wonderful.
I think it's great too. Yeah, I think the trio, it's a very classic gang, like squad, render. This is one of the original squads and gangs, right, that we get later in movie history, where if you watch you could take any sitcom, Friends, right? That's the Friends group, right? You've got Dairy Girls, if anyone's has seen Dairy Girls on Netflix, right? It's a group of friends. that following this Degrassi, you follow groups of friends. I'm sorry, you follow these heroes.
Wait. Oh, side note, like I got it. Full disclosure, I don't think I had ever heard of Degrassi before. Like,
it's a Canadian teenage drama from 2001 to 2015.
I've just been hearing about it nonstop. It's like,
because I'm doing a rewatch. I do.
Sorry, guys,
every,
I'm off to watch Degrassi.
Look, I have important things to do, like Graduate or Degrassi.
But it's so funny because what did I say the other night? It's like, Amy, you don't have to say you're off to watch Degrassi anymore because it's just assumed at this point.
I know it's 14 seasons of the Next Generation, and 4 seasons of Next Class on Netflix. So I'm watching Next Class. So technically, some of this is new. I had not seen Next Class. So I'm finally to the point where I hadn't seen it and it's new.
It's very important.
The original is Degrassi Junior High from the 80s. So it's a long-standing Canadian TV show history. Anyway, The Wizard of Oz. What did you think about Glinda in general, though? I kind of lose respect for her every watch. Are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, like...
when I first watched, I was like, yay, the Good Witch. And I'm like, Fish, you again?
Well, it's like...
You're not helping that much.
It's like, I was... like, the fact that she was the Good Witch, like, had me approving of her when I was a kid, but especially, like, after watching Wicked, I'm like, no, I'm in Elphaba's camp.
Well, and you have, like, you said the thing earlier about the slippers.
Yeah.
It's like, honey, there's better ways to do this.
This poor girl just wants to get home. Like, you could... like, you could, either take, the slippers for yourself and say the girl's not a part of it, mess with me. Or, just do anything and you could just tell Dorothy, don't get involved in this. All you need to do is... like, although technically, I guess she needs the slippers to get home, right? That's the whole thing. Okay, so like, so I guess that's part of the reason. But like, the slippers being on her feet, she could just at that point be like, okay, I know I kind of screwed you over
3 times and say,
I know I kind of screwed you over here, but all you got to do is click your heels and you'll get out of here. There's a lot of things she could handle differently.
I think that's one of the largest differences for me watching this as a kid versus watching it as an adult is how I view even the idea of good versus bad witches,
Yeah.
Especially looking at it from the feminist standpoint of it's just drink, the patriarchy moralizing what is a good and a bad woman. So I'm just like,
I mean, that's
like, you're a bad woman, you're a good woman.
But that said, if you're looking through the prism of just this film, the Wicked Witch is pretty wicked.
Oh no, she is. But like, you should then have a really good witch who does really super, super helpful things, not just I made it snow. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm so anti-Good Witch today. Like, if you just look at the movie, she's technically, she is the good guy. But I just, Hollywood at this time was not great, and I get that. But, that doesn't mean I can't be a little more nuanced in the way I look at things.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it through the prism of just this story, you could say, well, okay, she knows that, this other Wicked Witch also needs to be taken care of and maybe and Dorothy's gonna need the slippers to get home anyway, and maybe it's an example of her having foresight of this might happen if I take this action and that type of thing. But that said, like, I've seen Wicked now, so like that obviously colors my perception of events.
Well, it also makes me think of dear listeners, if you're fans of The Witcher, Yennefer and her kind of relationships with her classmates as they later on become mages as well, right? You do have this competition of the witches that is not at all there in Wizard of Oz if you're, it's not at all integrated. But you think about it, the good witch, she's the good, all the munchkins love her and everything. But we have the Wicked Witch of the East, Wicked Witch of the West. There's definitely like turf wars going on, right? And then all of a sudden Dorothy just drops a freaking house on one of them. It's like she's stepped into these politics that are totally beyond her control.
But here's another thing.
And then Glinda's just like, here, wear these nice slippers. Oh, never take them off. Don't worry about it.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I'm watching this on this viewing, and the first witch is killed by Dorothy dropping a house on her. Don't you think all the Munchkins are just a little bit too happy with knowing that this witch has a sister out there who's even
another
worse.
One.
It's like, maybe you don't celebrate.
She's like, I thought you said the witch was dead, and she's like, oh, that's her sister. It's like, you could have led with that. Like, and even after that, when the witch goes away, they're like, well, still welcome, Dorothy. We're the Lollipop Guild. It's just like, guys, like, I follow the Yellow Brick Road. It's like, this is I'm glad you're excited, but the danger's still very real, my friends.
Yeah.
But
never let impending, the more impending doom get in the way of a great musical number.
And also, actually, Jacob, I wasn't going to talk to you about this. There is a Crossroads moment in this movie, too, and I forgot about it. And Crossroads moments are very common in fiction, and also, of course, in cinema as well, and very symbolically important, right? The devil at the crossroads, right? You meet a fork in the road. Which path do you take? Oh, the path less traveled, all that. It's a very, very much in kind of literary history. And so I thought it was interesting that where she isn't sure where to go, that you have the Scarecrow who's like, you could go that way.
Which, by the way,
some people go that way. You can go both ways.
I also have to mention in the Fellowship of the Ring, on Samwise, it's like, if I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been. Which, even though it's not represented by a physical, crossroad,
it's a metaphorical one.
It's one for him, and there's a Scarecrow in the background of that shot.
Nice.
Which, of course, just like with this, there's crows actually on the Scarecrow because they're clearly not frightened of it. So
there's also, of course, many, the end of the crossroads, many crossroads moments in Game of Thrones as well. So, do we go to the Eyrie or to Winterfell? It's the crossroads.
Well, we even have an inn called the Inn at the Crossroads.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So no chance, no choice. Anyway, but that, and there's, Disney, if you want to think Disney princess, Pocahontas has her, do I take the roughest course? Or the smoothest course, steady as the beating drum. Anyway, sorry. You have this question of where do you go
It's next? All right, Amy. Like, we just need to tell everybody that Amy is really just
do you still? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a closet Pocahontas fan.
She is usually just a breath away from belting out Disney songs.
I am. I love musicals. I love them so much. But yeah, I'm a closet Pocahontas fan because I do realize how problematic it is, but I really, really like the songs. Anyway.
It's Disney. Is there anything? I don't think you're going to find any Disney animation that's not
problematic. Yeah, we're still going to have fun with Mulan, though, in May. I'm excited. But this crossroads moment for Dorothy, I think, is interesting because, you do have she, up until that point, at least kind of had instructions to follow the Yellow Brick Road and was like pretty sure what she was doing. And, she was sure she was going to take Toto and run away. She was sure she was going to go back and try to save Auntie M, right? This is the first time where we see her really completely at a loss. And so I think that was important for her growth. And then, of course, for her to meet the Scarecrow. And, he doesn't say, let's go this way. They just skip off that way. So I'm like, I guess he just directed her that way, whatever. Like, the Crossroads moment is very easily resolved because it's early Hollywood. But I do think it is the early seeds of that very thematic Crossroads moment that we see as a huge cinematic trope.
Well, every problem in a musical is always solved by a song. So
absolutely. If he only had a brain.
Yeah. I've never actually thought of that. The fact that she doesn't actually resolve her actual dilemma of which way she should go. They
just skip off to the left. They're left. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I guess it was a dance number and he was her dance partner. And she led, she followed. That's how they went that way. Cool.
Or the real answer is probably that the set comes to an end if you go the other way.
Yeah, if you go the other way, it's a dead end. So that's how she knew.
But okay, I do also want to mention, like, and I did talk earlier about how beautiful like the matte paintings and stuff are, but I just love the sort of quaintness of just watching this and with all these beautiful sets, and it just reminds me of like just the beauty of like old school Hollywood productions, and how everything was small scale. It's almost like you're watching a stage production of some kind, at least by today's standards.
Yeah, like in the foreground, it's cinema, but in the background, it's theater, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like what you're seeing immediately in front of you is obviously the movie set, but then behind you is it feels more like you're watching live theater.
Yeah.
And it's I actually like the contrast, especially, in that scene with the witch telling them to fly, my pretties, fly, right? So you have these just, these legions and legions of flying monkeys, and her being kind of, telling them to fly, and she's kind of in our immediate view, but then we see the background of the monkeys flying. Like I think it's a really great blend of foreground and background, and I think it's also, it was what they had to work with at the time, but it could now be seen as being stylistic, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and we watched another film which actually tried the approach of kind of cinema mixed with stage production, which was Anna Karenina, which we actually haven't done even a stream on that yet. So we'll probably do a podcast episode at some point. But which is a film that is basically set on stages, but uses filmmaking techniques. And sometimes when you leave like the Russian aristocracy, it goes out into real locations, but they move around. So it's that sort of what you were just saying. In a modern context, it becomes stylistic, which is the point of that film.
And Anna Karenina, we talked about that in our Focus on Keira Knightley video. So if you want to check out the John Webster film YouTube page, it'll eventually be up on the pod as a back episode. But we talked about 4 or 5 Keira Knightley movies, and that was one of them. So we did discuss that and that stylistic choice. I remember us discussing that directly. And I do believe we have in the description, I think we also have markers in the video where we start talking about each film. So you can just go to the Anna if you don't want to hear, if you just want to hear about us talk about that movie, you can do that.
And what's interesting about that is a lot of critics said that they were distracted by that and they didn't like it. But
yeah.
So
it was off-putting for me at first, but I actually kind of enjoyed the decision.
Yeah,
to do that.
Because I think at a certain point for me, though, I was able to you have to kind of use your imagination at a certain point and like just give into it. And I think for something like The Wizard of Oz and other older films, it's because we know that that's what they were working from at the time. So I think we find it easier than with a modern film production, I think.
Yes, definitely, because there are more advanced tools available. Whenever something we would consider lower grade is used, often fans are not kind on the internet. Right? They want the bit, that's the thing with one of your arguments against the MCU. That's the thing with like big Hollywood with all the explosions and all of these great effects is that then whenever filmmakers do something different and maybe a little bit more low tech, then it's seen as a step back when it should really be seen as using all the tools of cinema, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan. The way that he, used syrup because it was black and white, so you couldn't tell that it wasn't red because it wasn't blood. They were dyeing things red, and he's like, it's black and white anyway. Let's use syrup because it flows more like blood than all this other stuff we're using, and it's black and white. No one will tell. So obviously nowadays they have to make it red because it's color TV. But so you would think, oh, using black and white is old, but it's a stylistic choice that's been used in a lot of good movies. And it's been impactful to do that, like using it for flashbacks or dreams or something like that. Or when someone's going through some kind of psychotic episode to make everything at different colors, right? Those are stylistic choices that can enhance the movie. But I think because we do have all of these different types, and people have been obviously exposed to things like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they can make this whole tree person out of CGI, right? You're like, why are you doing this thing when you could make Groot, right? So I think that that's kind of where The Wizard of Oz is going, why The Wizard of Oz is easily held up as a movie classic, because it was using the tools of the time, and you can't really condemn it for that.
Yeah.
Whereas contemporary cinema is, especially with John, you talk about this a lot, of Rotten Tomatoes as it's either fresh or spoiled, right? It's either good or bad. Lindsay Ellis on YouTube talks about this a lot. Thing good or thing bad is a very common, very reductive way to look at movies.
We could do a whole episode about how much I hate Rotten Tomatoes. The website. I mean, I hate Rotten Tomatoes, actual Rotten Tomatoes too.
But fried green tomatoes, and so is the movie. Well, which is on my list. Don't you worry, dear listeners. I really want to talk about fried green tomatoes. Anyway.
Because that removes all sort of subtlety to film criticism, where you either like it or you don't, and that contributes to the overall percentage, rather than having like an actual in-depth discussion of the film. Because I mean, I guess you could hope that maybe, but that's the thing. A lot of people are going to look at that percentage rather than go and actually read the reviews that contribute to that percentage. So
I always tell people, watch it yourself. I've heard crappy things about Godzilla versus Kong. I'm still going to watch it and decide for myself. The viewer, like as a viewer of movies, you can decide what you like and what you don't like, and you might be swaying one way or the other by popular opinion. But you should be able to come to your own conclusions. I mean, as John, as someone who likes the Phantom Menace, you must know exactly what I'm talking about, making your own decisions about movies.
Yeah, because here was the thing, because back then Rotten Tomatoes wasn't a thing. But my frame of reference for that was, first of all, it was a new Star Wars, and I was like 15 years old. So I was super, super excited about the fact that it was coming out. But my only frame of reference for how it was received was, like the week that it came out, I think I read actually a 4-star review in the newspaper, which could have just as easily been a 1-star review if it had been a different critic. So maybe it was fortuitous that that particular reviewer liked the film. But then also I remember asking one of my teachers who had seen it before me, I was like, so what do you think? And they went, it's Star Wars, which is the kind of response I would have expected. And then I went to go see it for myself and had the absolute time of my life, because it was my first new Star Wars. I had seen the special editions when they came out, but that's different. When you're a young kid, it was a new Star Wars experience, and all of my friends loved it too. So
and it's nostalgic for me because it was my first Star Wars where I was alive, because I'm born in the 90s. So Phantom Menace was big just because it was my first time seeing Star Wars in the movie theater that wasn't a special release back in the theaters of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it so much that
I had Jar Jar Binks stickers
and this is
stickers in my room. So
this is the second time I'm confessing to this. I actually had a bootleg copy of Phantom Menace as well, but this was like way back in the day. I had actually gotten it from somebody else who presumably got it like secondhand from somebody who actually took a camcorder in the theater and recorded it. So
old-fashioned.
So I had like, it was a full screen 4:3 cropping of the film. So a lot of stuff was always out of frame watching it, but I didn't care because I loved the movie so much. And I raced out like the minute it came out on VHS. Like I ran out that morning to the CBS or whatever, and to get the videotape. And when it was my birthday, I had all my friends come over and we sat down, we watched it, and we were cheering it all the moment. So like my circle of friends, as far as we were concerned, it was like the best Star Wars movie ever. It wasn't until around the time that episode 2 started to come out and I was on the internet and started checking out forums and stuff that I realized that it was so reviled. But that goes to show you what power there is in blocking out other voices, or maybe not going to look at a percentage of what all the critics thought, and just having your own reaction to something. Because I lived in a bubble for a number of years where The Phantom Menace was a classic Star Wars movie, which is why it's probably still one of the more cherished installments of that series for me, which is a feeling I don't have for the other two of the prequels, because by that time I was exposed to the internet and everything that came with that. So I do feel like that kind of influenced my perception of those movies.
And I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a cinema viewer in 39. What would it have been like going to see The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, I mean, imagine living in that period with everything going on in the world.
Think about, you're in America and the war is heating up, obviously, in East Asia, in the Pacific, and then also in Western Europe. And America, until Pearl Harbor the next year, won't be in it, but it is encroaching and it is in the news daily. And what it would have been like to escape to Oz as an American viewer, where your country was, at that point, it was, other countries were begging for America to become a part of this world war, and it wouldn't be, so it was this time of great tension in America, and this time of great anxiety about what would happen in the future, because you had these world powers, these Axis powers such as Germany and the Empire of Japan, and so this must have been such a relief for a lot of people, especially during a time where the cinema was the main source of exposure, right? That there was often, we see this a lot in period pieces, where people would go for the previews because it would be newsreels. That's how you would get the news. That's how you learn about what's happening on the war front in Western Europe and in the Pacific, right? So you would get all of that, and then you would get The Wizard of Oz. And wouldn't that have been just a fresh breath of air? And I'm not at all devaluing. And I do want to also say, I will say very quickly, also a very privileged position as an American viewer to be enjoying that movie while there were Chinese people and Korean people, Taiwanese, Micronesian people being subjugated by the Japanese, and people in Western Europe being bombed by the Germans. The type of escapism that America was allowed at the time was not the reality for a lot of people all over the world.
Yeah. And also thinking about it in that context, though, I'm realizing that like we're going on about nitpicking whether certain things are resolved at the end of the film and stuff, but I think if you look at what was going on in the world at that time, it was like, I don't think I think very few members of the audience would care by the end of the movie, because they'd be so caught up in the happy resolve of the end of the film. I think it's
They're just glad Dorothy and Toto were home back in Kansas. Exactly. And that it was all a dream and that Dorothy is okay. I mean, that would have been the most common response at the time.
Yeah.
And of course it would, looking at this historically, you would think that would encourage the audience to think we're going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is why this was such an impactful movie in 39 specifically, was it was actually in a lot of ways comforting America in this impending war for them, which had already been going on for years for many other parts of the world.
Yeah,
But I am getting to, like, my limit, J-Dub, so if we could do, like, final thoughts.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're coming up. We're coming up on 2 hours, which actually I'm pleasantly surprised, because we talked about the fact that the podcast might actually end up being shorter than our streams. Yeah, but I'm actually rather happy that we had enough to talk about to continue on. But so yeah, we will wind down. I do want to say that, following up on that train of thought, it's also interesting to think what it would be like to sit in the theaters of the time watching this film, because there would be something more also elegant and old-fashioned about doing that. I wouldn't mind, like,
people would dress up to go to the theaters.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would be in your Sunday best watching The Wizard of Oz. I mean, it would have been earth-shattering, life-changing.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I just had a great time revisiting this movie. I think I always do. It just always turns me into a little kid again, when even from the very start. As soon as I press play and that music kicks in, I'm like, oh yeah, there's this thing, everything's okay. Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
If any, dear listeners, if any of you are Saturday Night Live fans, one of the latest episodes of this season, they had a funny skit about the Wizard of Oz, where when Dorothy wakes up, she is telling them all, oh, you were a Scarecrow, and you were a Tin Man, and this and that. And then all of a sudden these little people come on and they're like, what about us, Dorothy? What were we? And she's like, actually, you weren't in the dream. So they kind of really parody the kind of part about, actually nowadays with little people it's kind of awkward with the Munchkin Land. So if you want kind of a nice laugh about it, but also more of a kind of a serious demonstration of how problematic the Munchkins are, please check out Saturday Night Live. They have a really funny Wizard of Oz, and it's just the scene where she wakes up and she's like trying to avoid talking to the little people about how they were Munchkins in her dream, and it's quite funny. So you could check that out on YouTube under the SNL channel. But that's just a small thing. But I think that this movie and how it has affected popular culture and American culture, and specifically, obviously, American cinema, it's timeless. And so, for us to start this new era of cinematic realms and John Webster film with this movie, I think is very apt, because it really is the beginning of a lot of film criticism too. If we're going to do an academic look at it, I've read a lot of academic articles about The Wizard of Oz, looking at it at all different angles. It's really the birth of a lot of very mainstream kind of ideas about cinema and themes and imagery. And I think just because of that, even if, like I said, most people I know like the film, but even if you're not super into the film, this is an important part of your repertoire to be able to pull from if you want to be a cinephile.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I can add anything to that. I think it's a great note to end on, except I will say, defying gravity. Yeah. Go listen to the Wicked soundtrack.
Yes, please do.
But yeah, so yeah, this was the perfect movie to start off with, and so of course, naturally, next we'll be diving into our Keira Knightley love. with the first installment of the Nightly Hour, talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Yes, and that will be with our good friend Christina, aka Lady Triple. Please check her out on YouTube. She also is a part of the Lit Bringers. Check them out on YouTube. They make basically cover songs about Game of Thrones to tunes that you know. So, for example, the Take Me Home Country Road, West Virginia. They did that with The King's Road. It's really great. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, please check out Litbringers. It is lit over there. They are bringing it with the content, fresh, good content where they're all dressed up they're all cosplaying and they're all singing as characters from Game of Thrones. It's very, very funny. They call it filk. So it's like fan folk music. You're going to like it. It's great. So check out Lipbringers. We're very excited to have Christina. She was on for our Nightmare Before Christmas episode. So if you want to check out on John Webster Film, you can hear Christina and me talk over Steven and J-Dubs the whole time.
Yeah. There is a moment in that stream where Steven tries to interject, and I just go like, Steven,
just don't even try.
Just let it go.
Amy and Christina are going at it. Just let them go.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to do that. I do have to get talking with her, and we have to figure out which day we're going to record that, because our schedules are all over the place for this thing. And
Christine has been on my channel /pod twice, and going to be many more times. So she's a very big Avatar: Last Airbender fan, as am I. I've got all my latest content is pretty much Avatar: Last Airbender, so please check me out.
Yeah.
And Christina has got some great thoughts about Avatar.
And yeah, so I'm so excited. Now we're fully in the swing of things.
We're doing it. It's happening. Yeah. Soon we will be on all major podcast platforms.
Yeah. And we've actually I've been getting
we're already
a lot
on
of
Spotify.
Yeah, and we're on a few more. I don't know what all them are, because as I was getting notifications, I was like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, there's like Pocket Cast. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, still waiting on iTunes. I think they've been having some difficulties with their server the past couple days.
That was what took me the longest too, was Apple Podcasts when I started my pod. So
yeah, but hopefully we'll be up on there soon. And yeah, so that about wraps it up. Wow, we did over 2 hours. So then, thanks, Amy. And
of course,
I'm super psyched just for the stuff we got coming up, because obviously, like I said, we have Pirates of the Caribbean for the next episode, and then on the horizon will be some X-Men, and then some Disney with The Little Mermaid. So.
Yes, and please follow us both on Twitter at John Webster Film for John, and then at Amy Blackfire for me. That's where you'll find all about what we're doing, what's coming up, and you can interact with us. Let us know what you think. Do you have what movies should we cover? What do you think about certain things? And if you follow us on Twitter and you see the next movie we're covering, if you have some thoughts on that movie and you comment, you might be featured on the pod. So
yeah, absolutely. We'll
please interact with us. And after this video is up on YouTube and of course podcasts, leave a comment. Oh, and maybe leave a review for Cinematic Realms, because we're a new podcast and we need those sweet, sweet 5-star reviews. So please tell us that we're doing a good job, because we know we're awesome. I'm just kidding. Please tell everyone how much you love us and share the cinematic goodness with your friends.
Yeah. The thing about the reviews, the system will only allow 5-star reviews. Mm-hmm. So just
there's a glitch. So even if you want to give less, it won't allow you. So go ahead and put 5 stars, and in the review you can say you don't like us, but you have to do 5 stars. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's just a little quirk. So keep that in mind.
Don't know what's up with that, but
anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day or night or whenever you're listening to this, and we will see you next time for some Kira talk. So have a wonderful day.